Okay, next is to decide on the scope. What are you going to include and what are you going to exclude in your history? And so there's lots of different scopes that you have. One is an ancestral. In other words, you're taking a particular person. Maybe it's your father, for instance. So you take your father and you're going to do his ancestors. And so that's the history you're going to do. So that would be an ancestral family history. And you just say, okay, I'm going to do my father and his parents and his grandparents. So 3 generations. So that you decide what the scope is on the history. And that will help you to know what to include and what not to include. It doesn't prevent you from gathering information outside that you can do in a future volume, but it will help you to keep focused on what you're trying to do for your volume. Another way is to do descendants from a common ancestor. There's a lot of histories that we do that are descendant type histories. And so what they'll do is they'll take one common ancestor, say a great-grandfather or great-grandparents, and all of their descendants, their children and grandchildren. Look at that, and as you do descendants, you want to figure out how far you want to come down. Sometimes like what Dad did with the Richards family is he did an ancestral one first, and then volume 2 was the common ancestor and the children. And then volume 3 was the grandchildren. And then he did the great-grandchildren for volume 4. And so you can do that as you do a descendant one. Okay, so you can write it about one person. For yourself or your father or your mother or your grandmother or whoever it is. It's focused about one person. Now obviously all of these, you kind of have some ties into other people. If you're doing it on one person, you're going to talk about their parents a little bit, or you're going to talk about their children a little bit. But if the main focus is that person, then that kind of helps you keep the scope in mind. Now the next one is grandparents, like you were talking about. So if you want to do it on grandparents, it's great to do it on grandparents. There is one caution, though, I will give you with grandparents, and that is, if you're doing it on, it's my grandparents, so it'd be my mom's side and my dad's side. What that means is that the book would only be valuable, the whole book would only be valuable to their descendants. Where if I split it into 2, if I take my Stevenson side and my Kingston side and I split them into 2 separate books, then all of the Stevensons that are descendants of my grandparents would be interested in it, not just my descendants. Because they aren't related to the Kingstons, the Stevensons. All my Stevenson cousins are related to just the Stevenson grandparents, and vice versa with the Kingstons. And so that's one caution I'll give you if you're thinking of doing grandparents one. There's nothing wrong with it doing it that way if that's what you want to do, but just you've got to realize that the people that are going to be interested in it are just going to be your family and your children and grandchildren, because you're the only ones that have those same grandparents. And there's nothing wrong with doing 3 books. So you've got one book that's just on one grandparent set, and another book that's on the other grandparent set, and another book that's combined the 2 together for your descendants. So there's a lot of options. A lot of options.